Welcome back, Wolfpack. Verlis here. This is how to use Golbat, Vileplume, and Parasect, updating the quality of my older strategy guides and Golbat. Let's go check out stats since they're already on screen right now. So, interestingly enough, Golbat is not a fully evolved Pokemon because Crobat was introduced in the second generation. However, it has the tanky stats, like its defenses are about average with a lot of like sweeper Pokemon. So it's fairly not that durable, but also if you fully invest in the hit points, it's going to get kind of tanky. But since it isn't fully evolved, we can Eviolite, and that's what we're going to talk about with the primary moveset. Vileplume's stats, a bit tankier, also has a 110 on that special attack, so we're not going to be physical, and we're looking to be a bulky attacker because we have almost no speed. And then the stats for Parasect, 60 on the hit points, 95 on the attack, 80 on defense, 60 on special attack, 80 on special defense, and 30 on speed. Again, a very slow Pokemon, and we can see why Parasect isn't used that often just by glancing at its stats. I mean, it's not going to be the super durable Pokemon, it's not going to put out a lot of damage, it's just going to receive more damage than it takes, and then it's going to be slower anyways, pretty much no matter what. Looking at the typings, Golbat is going to be a poison flying Pokemon, so this is how our breakdown is going to be, that we have a lot of neutral hits, and we do have to worry about rock, electric, psychic, and ice. We are immune to ground typing, and we do gain quite a few resistances. 1/4 damage from grass and bug type Pokemon, as well as resisting fairy. That's a big one. Other poison type Pokemon, as well as being immune to poison, and we also have 1/4 resist on fighting. So we can pick and choose. Like, as long as we're not going up against super effective hits, we have a lot of resistances right here that are very heavy, and that could really help us out. So looking at these stats for Vileplume, grass poison typing, psychic weakness, and then grass weaknesses, and then some resistances like grass and fairy. Also have the electric weakness, which works out pretty well, water and fighting. So pretty standard stuff right here. Now, oh man, poor Parasect. There's the 4 times weakness to fire, but it's also a bug grass Pokemon, so it's a 4 times weakness to flying as well. Poison, rock, bug, fire, ice. There's so many things that's weak against. Almost as many weaknesses as neutral hits, and then decent amount of resistances. I mean, quad resist to ground is pretty nice, quad resist to grass, and then we have electric, water, and fighting. So now we're going to go over to Pokemon Showdown and check out the movesets. I want to start off with Golbat because it's a very weird Pokemon because you have to Eviolite, and then you can go very tanky on it. And it does have enough speed to where if you're going against other tanky Pokemon, you're going to be faster than it. But if you're going against sweepers, you are going to be slower. But that's why we're pretty tanky. We try to play it out like this. Now, Golbat is one of the very few 6th generation legal defog Pokemon that while you can go back to 4th generation and TM a defog, it's not going to have the Pentagon, so you're not going to be able to use it in a lot of competitive battles. But Golbat has the defog. So if you really want an anti-setup kind of Pokemon, Golbat's actually pretty solid because you can Toxic your opponent, which is going to put them on timer and at least make it a hassle for them to do things. Golbat itself can't get Toxic, so that's a plus right there. You can also Roost, and then you can use Confuse Ray. So you Confuse Ray a Pokemon, you tank up their hit, you Roost it out. The second they hit themselves in confusion, you can either clear out their setup, or you throw down a Toxic, or just get a lot of things going in your favor. That's going to be the biggest thing about using Golbat. Now, Golbat also does have a lot of reset moves. If you don't, it's hard, because I feel getting rid of Confuse Ray would be a bad move. If you confuse your opponent, it gives you a much safer switch out. It gives you a lot more opportunities to really snowball the battle. So in those situations, you can choose to not be Toxic stalling, but in that case, Golbat's your last Pokemon, you lose a lot of kill pressure, and Roost loses you a lot of sustain. But at the same time, Golbat gets Haze. So you can kind of use Golbat as an ultimate reset. That, you know, if they haven't set up too much to where they one-shot your Golbat, you can Haze, you can Defog, you can Confuse Ray them, and then you can pretty much try to get the momentum back in your favor because Golbat's going to be very tanky with that Eviolite, so at least you can stop their momentum cold and try to bring it back in your favor. That's going to be pretty solid. Now, Toxic plus Confuse Ray can also find a lot of KOs. That if they can't do a massive 2-hit KO on you, then you're going to be able to win out those battles by just roosting up if you are running the Roost on the set, which is why you want that. But at the same time, you know, they take Toxic damage. They hit themselves in confusion. That's damage. They take more Toxic damage. You stay at full, you heal up. Golbat's going to be able to make a lot of work out of that and maybe find some kill pressure through a little bit of hacks, but also just playing it as a very tanky Pokemon. And even then, Golbat is very powerful in double battles as well. Boom, you lead Tailwind. Now you're going to be faster, so all the other things that you do are going to be pretty nice. Super Fang, cuts an opponent's hit points down to half immediately. It doesn't matter how tanky that Pokemon is, their current hit points will go down to half, which could help for securing a KO on tankier Pokemon, depending on if you're going for like split damage and stuff. So Golbat works really well next to something like a Pixelate Hyper Voice or even an Aerialate Hyper Voice from like a Mega Salamence. As long as you're getting mad amount of damage supported behind you, then Tailwind plus Super Fang, a little bit of chip damage can work out pretty well. This is where I'm just a big fan of the Confuse Ray. You know, you outspeed your opponent, they have a chance to shut themselves down, and then you also have the Quick Guard. Now, Quick Guard is going to be primarily used to like stop fake out and stuff. Now, Golbat does have the inner focus, but depending on what your allied Pokemon is doing, it might need the Quick Guard, or just might not want to see any kind of priority, because you can outplay Talonflames with this, you can outplay quite a bit of Pokemon. Also, if your opponent has any Prankster Pokemon, you get to Quick Guard it out. You can do all kinds of really fun stuff. I don't think the inner focus is necessary then, and Infiltrator is going to be pretty niche, but just in case they have that substitute, you get to confuse them through sub, you get to Super Fang them through sub, and that could make a really big difference later on in the battle. Again, you are going to want the Eviolite, and also that's why I want the Infiltrator right here, that if you can Toxic a Pokemon that's trying to like sub-stall, or at least give on a substitute and not take status, that can swing the battle back in your favor, because it's like, alright, now one of their biggest things to get over. You know, if your opponent gets in on a free sub and then they have sustain and that sub won't go down, or they can keep refreshing it, that's going to be pretty bad if you have a very status heavy team. So having an Infiltrator really cuts down the chances that you're going to get bodied by a substitute, which is kind of the whole purpose of substitute being a move. So then we can move on to Vileplume. Like Golbat, it's not a Crobat, it's not going to do as much damage as fast, and it's going to have a couple other things. Like if you want Tailwind into Taunt, you can run that as well. It's really how much you want to rely on the hacks on the Super Fang or something like that. But overall, there's a lot of just utility things that Golbat can run that make it pretty good. I mean, we can go and kind of scroll through its moveset. You know, there's the Haze, there's an Air Slash if you want that. Also, we do have the Taunt. We have U-Turn if you want to like kind of switch out and stuff. Hypnosis. Hypnosis is kind of weird because it's going to be a really risky move at that 60% accuracy. However, it can shut down an opponent really well. You also have Whirlwind. I don't know what Whirlwind's going to accomplish for you, honestly. And you do have Snatch as well. Like, not a lot of Pokemon get Snatch, so maybe in Dual Battle you can run Snatch, try steal your opponent's status and whatnot. As for Whirlwind, as I was like trying to mention with Whirlwind, it's not as good as Haze in a way. Like, you can Whirlwind out some Pokemon stuff, but at the same time, Defog is going to be removing the field conditions, so if you have Stealth Rocks or Spikes or something like that, then you won't be able to Whirlwind them through that if you're actually using Defog to keep their entry hazards off the field as well. So, I mean, there's just a nice little bag of tools that you can run with the Golbat. Other than that, we can go and check out Vileplume. As I said, just go be a tanky Pokemon that can actually put out a surprising amount of damage. You can run modest 110 on that special attack, and then you get good amounts of stab or coverage, like Moonblast. Boom, fairy beating damage right here. Giga Drain's going to be sustain on top of coverage, and then Sludge Bomb is going to be your go-to. Sludge Bomb is going to do a surprising amount of damage, and for how tanky you are, it's going to work out pretty well. So, you know, you can max out on the hit points and just endure things, and then when it gets bad, you know, Moonlight, Black Sludge, that's going to heal you up. Giga Drain, Black Sludge. You're going to be able to shrug off damage much better than your opponent is dealing it to you. Also, if you're going up against a tankier Pokemon, might get that Sludge Bomb poison. I mean, it is a 30% chance, and if people are banking on Scalds going for burn, Sludge Bomb getting poison, not too much to ask for at all. And you do have the Effect Spore, so there's a chance they could get poisoned, paralyzed, or sleep anyway if they are making contact. Like, the way I deal with Vileplume, every once in a while, I encounter a Vileplume, and it honestly gives me trouble. That if you can't blow it up with a super effective hit immediately, and you're trying to play like a tankier kind of game, Vileplume's almost an anti-tank in that way. It's a poison type, so you can't Toxic, and it's kind of really beefy, so it's going to be hard to get over. And even then, you don't even have to run the special attack on it. They can run higher amounts of defenses, maybe splash in the Toxic, or just try to go for the damage as well, you know? Sludge Bomb, Giga Drain, you're going to chip them away while still being way too tanky. Also, Sleep Powder is a move on Vileplume. 75% if you want to take it. You know, you're a tanky Pokemon. You're going to be taking 3 hits before you go down. So, you know, one Sleep Powder can miss, you can land the other one, and unless you're having very bad luck, it's going to work out in your favor. Moonlight back up to full, chip them down with damage. They wake up, they hit you, you Sleep Powder them again. Cycle continues forever. But Vileplume, it can make it just a little more annoying against tankier Pokemon. Against sweepers, like if you're looking to anti-sweep with the Vileplume, maybe not go with the Sleep Powder option as much, just so you have the extra coverage against the fancy stuff. But it's up to you what you want to run, and either way, you're going to get some good usage out of Vileplume. And then last up, we have Parasect. So Parasect can be used in single battles, mostly just as a Spore Pokemon. You know, you spore them, you try to be a little tanky, and then you just switch out and you try to capitalize from there. Also have aromatherapy, so you can slightly cleric if you want to, but mostly Parasect is going to get a lot of damage done in doubles. That there's quite a few Fan Fridays of using Parasect, and my goodness, this Pokemon can be annoying. That if Xerneas is going for the Dazzling Gleam, or if Groudon or Kyogre are going for their signature moves, yeah, you can Wide Guard stop that, and since it has priority, your opponent doesn't get to do anything to that. You also have Rage Powder, so if you're going for setup, you know, Rage Powder, focus all the single hits onto yourself, which means that, in theory, it's almost impossible to touch your allied Pokemon when you're running the Parasect. The only thing you're limited by is your tankiness and getting hit by super effective moves really easily, but it's going to at least give you a turn, kind of, maybe, and then you also have these Spores, so you can choose an opponent to put to sleep, then you have X-Scissor. Other than X-Scissor, you can either go, like, full support, you know, you do get the Synthesis, so I mean, Synthesis make it harder to knock out, so that means you're just really putting everything on your other 3 Pokemon, which isn't a bad thing at all, especially if you're shutting down, you know, very hard hits from the Wide Guard or the Rage Powder to begin with. After that, you know, you just need to go full hit point defensive investment, depending on where the meta is going. You know, if the meta is more defensive, do that. If the meta is more split, do that. You know, you can run max into one and then go of the nature for the other, so then we go like careful nature or something like this. Or you can go it the other way around. What would that be? Impish? Yeah, you go like Impish Nature and then you max out the stuff like that, or you can just play it up however you want to, you know. Now, I've seen some interesting combos with Parasect because you can run Magic Coat or Magic Bounce, and I've even seen like Lumberry, so anticipating some kind of Dark Void Smeargle, you know. Parasect eats the hit, Lumberry wakes it up, and then you Magic Coat the Dark Void back to your opponent, and then you can shut them down from there. Make sure your opponent stays down with the sleep, or if you're running that strategy specifically, that's when you want to see even just a little bit of damage out of the X's, or you're going to be breaking Focus Sash. You might find a little bit of extra damage against some of the tankier Pokemon. There's some weird things you can do with this. Unfortunately, Wide Guard does not stop Dark Void. It doesn't stop like those status moves that affect multiples. I feel that in the 7th generation, this needs to be changed. Like, that would be such a cool thing, and it would give Wide Guard even more use if it shut down Dark Void Smeargle. So that means that problem would go away, or at least be a little harder to play around, and has a lot more outplay potential. But in that, Wide Guard is still pretty solid to use. Other things you can run Parasect, Focus Sash, just to make sure you stay on the field just a little longer. It kind of goes against running tanky investment, but at the same time, you know, if they have a 4x super effective fire hit, you're going to go down no matter how much investment you have. So you might as well have that Focus Sash just in case in those situations, but then you just want to Rage Powder, try to soak up, try to get your other Pokemon going, and if they don't focus your Parasect, then that's when you have the opportunity to get Spore, put them to sleep, and just kind of be a little bit of annoyance. They have to hit it at some point, and that might buy you enough time. It's kind of how the Parasect works. You make a Wide Guard outplay, and then you can win the battle. I think the biggest thing about Parasect is the people that don't watch this video and the people that don't know what Parasect is capable of, they're not going to expect the Wide Guard, and then you win on an outplay effectively. So that works. If you guys did enjoy the video, that's how you use Golbat, Vileplume, Parasect. Hope you all have a nice day. Thank you very much for watching.